Welcome, everyone, and we're thank you for taking time out of your busy evening to be here. And I know it's a rough night for people in the middle of the week, so we're just happy to gather and update each other on what's going on with our clean air group efforts at El Marino. And my name is Rania Sapti Daly. I'm a parent here at El Marino, and I have a child in 5th grade, one in middle school, one in high school, and we started this clean air group effort a couple of years ago, and I've been part of it from the start. And we're very happy to have with us Mike Reynolds from the district, so he'll introduce himself too.
Yes, I'm Mike Reynolds, Assistant Superintendent of Business Services for the district. It's nice to be here this evening. I brought a little handout if we could make sure everybody has a copy. And this is going to update us on where we are as of this moment.
I want to thank Mike for coming, because we would love to hear about what the district is up to. So we can't wait for you to present that to us. We will start with Mike kind of reminding everyone, some of you have been here before and know exactly what we're doing, but some of you don't. And so we will update you real quick on where we came from, and then Mike will help us to get us to where we are today and where the efforts are going. I want to thank in particular the teachers that have been involved with us from the very start. Maestra Roberta Serjant is not with us today, but she's been with us from the beginning, and I want to thank her for all her support and help and guidance, and she's been really critical to our work. And today we have with us Senora Paul, who has joined our group, I want to say last year and even maybe before, and she's been great to have in our group too, because we need everyone's perspective and everyone's involvement, and we all have different perspectives and they all matter. And so it's been a collaborative effort. The teachers, the very concerned teachers, concerned parents, and the district, who is also concerned, and our school principal, who is not here today with us, but she is in support of our effort and wished she would have been here. And so we need everyone to be involved, and we're happy that parents are getting more and more involved in our efforts. Christina joined us a few years ago, and she's been taking on some efforts on her own, and she will talk about her efforts. So I just want to say that this has been teamwork, and it only works when different people get involved, because then we enrich the work. And so I want to thank everybody and start off with that. The update, you have just joined us. Do you mind introducing yourself to the group? Okay, great, thank you.
Hi, my name is Maria Calle. I am mom of Valentina Martinez Calle. She's in 2nd grade. That's all. And I want to know what is this meeting about, because I always hear and never can come, but today I try. So I want to see what happened, because I'm concerned about the environment too for my kids.
So for those of you who might be new to what we've done, we started this about November 2011, and teachers from many years before us have been concerned as well, parents as well, about the air quality, because we are really close to the 405. But the health concerns for being in proximity to the freeway, is relatively new in terms of research. 10 years ago, we didn't know what this could have done, and now we know more, and we kind of can't hide behind the knowledge as much anymore as we used to before, because there's quite a bit of knowledge out there, which has been helpful to guide us in our efforts and to give us the scientific background for why we need to deal with the air quality at El Marino. So we started it in 2011. We did a lot of research as parents and found out what other schools have done, if there's any technology, if there's any methods to mitigate this air pollution. And we started doing a lot of that, and then as our new superintendent came on board in 2012, along with Mr. Mike Reynolds also, they came on board really quickly and really were concerned and wanted to learn more about it with us. And so we've done a little bit of work in collecting data on air quality, in collecting data on what filtration methods exist, or any other cleansing devices that we can bring into the classroom to improve the air quality. And with the cooperation of this gigantic effort that took everyone, we reached out also to the Air Quality Management District, which has helped us with information and the technological information about what other schools have done and what they know about air filtration in the classroom for schools that are located near freeways. We reached out to USC, who has done a lot of work with children that go to school in proximity to freeways. And, you know, is that a concern really? And what do they know from that based on their research, but also the research of other people in their field? And they know a lot more about what's going on in the field than perhaps we do. And then the district, you know, was always present in all of this, and Ms. Pamilia. So point is that we ended up getting to deciding that we need to bring a pilot filtration system to one of our classrooms. And we did that last year, and it was installed. It was a donated unit by Ferguson Enterprises, SoCal Air Dynamics installed the equipment. They had worked with some other projects with the AQMD, also in other schools that were trying to clean up the air inside the classroom because of freeway pollution. So we felt that these were, you know, people who could help us out, at least at this stage of the process. And the district paid for the installation of the pilot unit. So it was a group effort and collaborative work. And then we had the Air Quality Management District help us with collecting data to see what the efficiency of that system at filtering the ultrafine particles and black carbon and keeping those out of the classroom. So the numbers came out nice. We sampled over a period of 3 days, which included a full school day, like from before the school and kids entered the classroom till after they left. And we found out that the system that we now have in place, which was installed in the kindergarten, the closest room that we have to the freeway, which happens to be a kindergarten, we found out that on the average it removed like 94% of ultrafine particles from the classroom. And it did the same effectiveness with black carbon. And so it would work even better for larger particles. If we were concerned about other things, it would be very effective because it removes the tiniest of particles. And so with that, we felt that we had, you know, evidence now. We were able to show that to the school board and let them know that the system works. We can provide cleaner air for our children. It is possible. There is technology available. It is doable. And we also, you know, learned that the key to this, for this to work, is to be able to shut the doors of the classroom and filter all the air that goes into the classroom. So this was important information. You know, even with that system in place, if we leave the doors open for a period of time, it does not work. And so we need to be able to keep the doors closed, and we need to filter all the air that comes through, and then it works really well. So with that in mind, the district took it upon themselves, and the school board approved of moving forward with this and seeing what they can do to deploy this mitigation effort or a similar one that would be able to work for the whole school. How could we deploy a similar effort into the rest of the school? I do want to say here that we passed a school bond measure in June. It was June 6 maybe, 2014, and this project is one of the projects that the fund would cover, but it would bring improvements to all the schools and in whatever the needs of each school might be. This has been set as one of the needs for this school, and so we're very happy that we were part of, you know, the passing of the bond measure as parents and individuals when that time was there. And I want to tell parents that your involvement does matter. So, and it starts now, not the day of an election one day. You really got to be involved so that you know what's going on and you can make a difference when that day comes. And so.
So does that mean that it's been approved to have a system put in every single classroom?
I am going to turn the mic over to Mike Reynolds, who is going to talk about the next phase and who I think can answer your question better than I at this point, because he will take it from here as to what the district plans to do from here on and where they're at with that effort. Is that okay with you? Yeah? Okay. Okay. So Any questions so far? Sorry, Mike, one question, one point. Besides that question, anything about what I've covered that you're not clear about, or we're good? We can go move forward. Okay, so Mike?
Okay, great. Thank you, Rania. I'd just like to say a big thanks to Stefan and Rania for their leadership in moving this project forward and bringing the attention to it that it richly deserved. It is a concern. The 405 runs very close, as we know, to our school. And the diesel trucks that go up and down it continuously, they spew out this black carbon, ultrafine particles, and that's what we want to mitigate in terms of what is entering the classroom air. To do that, I'm going to be talking about a couple of things that will let you know what has gone on so far. The first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the performance evaluation of air filtration devices. South Coast Air Quality Management District did a test of quite a few different devices to figure out which ones which one actually was the most effective. I'll go into their research just a little bit. They found that the one filter that was best is called the Nanomax Ultra High Performance Air Filter. And then I'll talk a little bit about the feasibility study that's ongoing at the moment. We contracted with Southland Industries to take a look at what could be done here on campus and essentially any of the campuses that would have an issue. Washington Boulevard also has a lot of vehicles on it. That runs right in front of our La Bayona Elementary School site. That's also a concern. Okay, first of all, if we could start with the executive summary. It's a little technical, but as I've learned from Rania, these topics, this topic is somewhat technical to understand what's going on in the air and how to address it. The executive summary states that the goal of the testing program was to evaluate the ability of various air filtration devices to reduce the outdoor infiltrated concentrations of ultrafine particles, called UFPs, particles with an aerodynamic diameter equal or less than 100 nanometers. It took me, I've been here 2 years, and it's taken that long to figure out what all the acronyms are for. And black carbon, BC, once again, as I mentioned earlier, an indicator of diesel particles. So as the trucks go down the road, the black carbon is coming out along with the ultrafine particles. South Coast Air Quality Management District, they contacted over 150 manufacturers of air filtration products and found that 9 companies participated in the program with a total of 15 different air filtration devices that were submitted by testing. They actually set up the test in a portable classroom in Riverside County, and they noted that the use of prefabricated structures, portable classrooms, sometimes we call them bungalows in our district, is becoming more and more prevalent in the United States public schools. And it's been estimated in California about 1/3 of the students spend time in portable classrooms during a typical school day, which I found very interesting. I didn't realize it was that pervasive. The UFPs, or ultrafine particles, and BC black carbon were measured at different distances from the device tested, both indoors and outdoors. And maybe in a little bit we'll have, if Rania could, maybe mention a little bit of the details of the testing we did, because she went to great pains to make sure that we had a scientifically valid test methodology. The only air filtration devices that satisfied the following minimum pre-specified requirements were accepted as approved technologies. One was the overall removal efficiencies for UFP and BC of at least 85%. Relative removal efficiency for UFP and BC of 85% for standalone units, as well as panel filters and register systems. No ozone generation, and then a noise level before 45 decibels. Obviously, the noise level of the units can't be too loud, or the students are not going to hear what you're telling them, and that's a big concern. A little bit more about that in a second as it relates to our current study. The panel filters, for panel filters, the overall particle removal efficiencies increased what they call the minimum efficiency reporting value, or MERV rating. And filters are often referred to as by their MERV rating. It's maybe a MERV 7, probably a common household filter, I believe, Ronnie, would be somewhere around a MERV maybe 6 or 7. A high quality one might be 13. And then the highest quality that's made by a company called IQ Air is a MERV 16. They found that the overall removal efficiencies for the MERV 16s, I believe, were between 88 and 91% for the ultrafine particles and the black carbon. They found that only the Clean Zone SL, which is a filtration device manufactured by IQ Air, did not exceed a noise level of 45 decibels, and which is a threshold set by many school districts for new in-classroom equipment. And they found that all standalone units and register-mounted systems were found to generate no measurable ozone levels. What they found was that the best one was called the Nanomex. Talk a little bit about the Nanomex filter.
I think it's produced by IQ Air.
It is.
The manufacturer is IQ Air.
Which is, and I always get them backwards, Rania. I believe they're in Switzerland. I believe they're in a Swiss company. Okay, I always say Sweden, but that's always wrong. They have not moved their headquarters. What happens then is that the Nanomex filter became the heart and soul of our focus. As long as the air that's moving in from the outside into the classroom is all filtered through the Nanomex, as advertised, it was advertised to be a 95% filtration level. Rania, you tested it scientifically and validated that was the result. So we're not just believing the advertising, we actually measured it and found that that was an accurate statement.
And the pilot system that we have has that filter in place.
Exactly.
It shows it for the pilot, and yes.
There's a lot of information here on how the units are cost effective because you don't have to replace the filters right away. They are a little expensive. We bought several. We bought one, of course, that went in the unit itself that's in the kindergarten classroom, but we also bought 3 more, and we were able to retrofit the 3 portable classrooms that are along that same row near the freeway. So those all have the MERV 16. We're working on getting a custom-built high MERV filter for the 4th portable because it had a different configuration where the filter went in the HVAC unit. But at the moment, I believe we put a MERV 13 in there, but we're going to have to try to cut down or expand one of the MERV 16s to fit it in there. But that's twice as much filtration as would normally be found in a portable classroom.
When
Yeah.
you say portable classrooms, are those the classrooms by the basketball courts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the ones that are kind of an extension back there, the closest to the freeway.
So I think we recently had that conversation just to clarify,
Mhm.
because we weren't sure which portables had the filtration, and we found out that we recently tried to find out more about where exactly were the filtration placed in those units because parents were asking, and we found that Kick was installed with a filter. My understanding is SAC is the one that needs the retrofitting. So it has a MERV 13 now, which is not as effective, but it's better than nothing. And it's being retrofitted because the opening will not fit the filter, and they're working with that. And the other 2 bungalows, which are then the art room, 27 and 28, the art room and the PTA parent gathering room are outfitted with those filters now.
So-
Am I correct about that? I think that is the correct information.
Can I ask a question? So does a system need to be on then for them to be filtering the air? Because I don't think that any of the teachers know that information. I don't even know that. And I know that the doors are usually open to that room.
Yeah, if I could maybe address that. Yeah, that it's very recent, and we do have some a learning curve we'll have to be going through. People historically, I think, like the fresh air, and so we need to even further our educational component with our staff in letting them, making them more aware that the air is not as fresh as the springtime air you might enjoy if you were a few miles away from the freeway. So one thing I should mention is that the normal filters, standard filters you'll find, they do a really good job of filtering out the large particles of pollution in the air, but it's the MERV 16 that get the tiny ones. And as Ronnie has taught us, it's the tiny ones that are the most pervasive, that end up in, getting, they're invisible to the eye for the most part, and so that's the danger. So I think there's some behavioral modification that we need to address, as well as some educational. Yes?
I was just wondering, how often does the filter have to be changed? Are you going to?
So the question is, how often do the filters have to be changed, or do we know that yet?
Well, they haven't been there long enough to really know for certain, but my understanding is they're good for at least 6 months, I believe. Now, once again, that's, I think, from the advertising, but they've been accurate so far with their information they've shared. I can find out more information about that.
And I want to add that some of that information you're referring to, I think it was about 6 months, we got that from the AQMD study, where they actually tested them in a classroom. So we're trying to get that information from them because they've already done it in a classroom. But we're going to have to go through our own learning curves when these filters are in to evaluate them periodically to decide when is a good time to change them. But for now, we'll keep it at 6 months because that's a good guess. But I guess that's a learning process that the district will have to go through.
So is this with the existing air conditioning systems that were already in there that they're running it through, or is it? Okay, so we're using the old systems that were already in place in the portables, and we're just put the filters in. There's no other, because I remember when they did the pilot, it's this big, all comprehensive system that is the most effective. So I'm just kind of curious how that compares to what's being done in the portables.
Well, I think we're going to, at some point, prevail upon Rania to do some measuring to see what actually the results are in the portables. Theoretically, if all of the air entering any space is ran through the Nanomax MERV 16, there shouldn't be any particles that enter from the outside air in as long as the doors are shut and the windows are shut. I'm on page 3, just I noticed that under proven performance, the last sentence says Nanomax filters were found to extend filter replacement intervals from 3 months up to 12 months. To answer that question. Also, the Nanomaxes, I started to say this, but I don't remember if I did or not, are about $170, but they last about 4 times longer than normal filters. And the way they're manufactured so that they don't stop the airflow. They don't impede the airflow like a lot of cheap filters do. They have a lot of surface area, the way they kind of go back and forth within their structure, kind of like folds. And so what we understand, and what was borne out by our test unit, is that there is no or very little interference with the flow of air.
So I want to add that that makes it so that these filters, and that was one of the criteria that AQMD had used at the time, you could put them in any existing ventilation system without making it too hard on the motor to work and push the air through, because otherwise it wouldn't fit in that bungalow, for example, that already would have an AC system. So that was one of their criteria: efficient, but also doesn't impede airflow. And somehow the way this is manufactured, all the pleats and whatever, does that job. So I want to go back to your question, which is, does it work? I think, like he was saying, we're going to have to come in and do some testing at some point of whether it's working or not. The equipment we borrow from USC, you know, $8,000 to $16,000 to just borrow. Not we don't pay for it; they let us borrow it, thank goodness, and they're very generous. But it takes some doing to get that equipment. So it makes sense that we now that as soon as the four bungalows are going to have it in, it'll be a good time for us to borrow the equipment and run some testing on that one day. Because then it's efficient that we do it all in one day. And that's a great next step for us to do now that we know that these things are in. And I guess, what's the timeline for the SAC unit to go in? You know, we'd like to know.
We're going to have, it seems to me we could cut one down and shape it.
Oh.
Thank you, Stefan. I'm about to attack one with a pair of scissors and see if I can. I'm like a can-do kind of person, you know. But really, it's just a question. And to obtain the extra 3 MERV, value MERV, is to go in and just make it fit. That had a different filter compartment that was oddly shaped and compared to the other. The others, they fit right in like two minutes. But this one's posed a little more of a challenge.
So we're clear though that that's more of a Band-Aid for the issue. I mean, those AC units in there don't have the capacity to bring in enough air, right? Doors being closed and everything else.
That's something we need. What Stefan's talking about is important. We mentioned the decibel level. There's also airflow parameters that we need to make sure are happening in order to have the ideal environment for the educational process to take place. You don't want to have too little air, too little fresh air. And the filters, the nice thing about the Nanomax is they don't impede that. So whatever the existing airflow is through what they call the barred HVAC systems, which are the ones that are on the outside of the bungalows, they're the same airflow. But I'm not familiar right now with the airflow. So you basically have a couple different things. You want to have a system that filters out all the particles, including the black carbon and the small particles, ultrafine particles, and then you want it to be quiet enough so that it doesn't impede the educational process, or else we've shot ourselves in the foot. And then you have to have enough airflow so that the kids don't get sleepy without opening up the window or the door and then letting in more of the what's coming from the freeway.
I had a question. Perhaps this is a really silly question. So with the systems in the bungalows right now, is the HVAC filter only working when either the heater or the air conditioner is on? So you actually have to be actively heating or cooling a room in order for it to be working?
In essence, if the room were completely shut, the door was shut, the windows were shut, the only air that would be entering the room would be through the filtration system. So in essence, you wouldn't have to have it turned on. It's like if you have an enclosed space and there's only one window or one opening, and that opening has a Nanomax filter, the only air you're going to get, unless you open the doors, is going to be what comes in through there. Now, I think to effectively clean the air that's pre-existing in the classroom, because you have to open the doors, of course, to let the staff and students in, then you'd have to run it in either heat, or it could run in just fan mode. The one that we put into the K building, we've recommended that be left in fan mode, because that will actually recirculate the air and do the cleaning. Otherwise, just opening the door and then not running it, which addresses actually the thrust of your question, it's not going to help very much.
I might be jumping the gun here, but we had the bond issue that's come through. It's approved this whole idea of bringing it in. But this is a very expensive project that is going to repeatedly cost money to do the filters. So once it's installed, how is it going to be funded to continue to make sure that the classrooms are going to have the filtration systems up to date with new filters?
I'll talk about it now. That's a good question. The real expense is in the installation of the units, not just the units themselves, but we're more than likely going to have to upgrade the electrical panels to power that many units, depending. Right now, there are no, other than the portables, there are no AC units. There are heater units, but they tend to be so loud that they interfere with instruction. So, but we do have electricity in place, but it may not be powerful enough to run more robust units. We also we have to do if AC were to be installed, then you have runoff condensation. As you know, if you have it in your house, that has to go somewhere as well. In a public space, there are regulations about how we divert that runoff. It just can't run through the sidewalks or whatever. So the installation is the heavy one. At $170 every 6 months, let's say for 30, 35, 40 classrooms for filters, that's not a significant challenge in terms of fiscally to the district. Fortunately, from the big picture, the state economy has really turned around in the last 24 months. When I got here 24 months ago, there were furlough days. Things were looking grim. If Prop 30 hadn't passed, they were going to cut $3 million out of our budget a year. That passed, and then now we're hearing that the state has collected $2 billion more than they thought they were going to collect. So at the moment, the future looks pretty good as far as funding ongoing. And it's not a super huge expense, but that's a good question. Once the units are in place, the installation that's the big one. And then, of course, the energy usage is a consideration, but that's that all weighs into the balance. But excellent question. What we did back in July, a few months ago, we asked our construction management firm, Balfour Beatty, if they could recommend a firm that could come in and do some testing of various units and develop the best answer to providing air mitigation throughout the school, which relates to your question about, is this something planned for all the classrooms? At the moment, we're assuming it would be. A minimum for the classrooms closest to the freeway, but my feeling is that there would be careful consideration made to expanding that throughout the site, I would think, my personal opinion. So what they're looking at is within the scope of the study. So we hired this firm to come in, and this was what they submitted as a proposal. The following, under the scope, the following feasibility studies will be done for the classrooms nearest the 405 freeway. And then they said, here are options. You have natural ventilation, kind of what we're talking about just natural airflow in and out of the classroom. Retrofit the existing furnaces with a coil and outdoor condensing unit. In other words, take the furnaces and turning them into HVAC units with the NanoMax filters in place. Or provide a complete new split system replacing the existing furnaces. Or provide a packaged AC similar to the pilot, the huge system that's in place. So those are kind of the four options that would be most obvious. So they came in, they spent a lot of time here, and if you look on the next page that starts with my name at the top, shows a little classroom, more or less, outdoor, or a diagram of the outdoor air coming into the classroom. They talk a little bit about their initial visit and how they went about the study and where they're at. It says on August 26th, the manager David and Stefan walked the El Marino Language School facility with me and gathered data firsthand on air quality challenges present at the school and with the desired improvements. They surveyed the previous pilot system that's in the kindergarten room and received feedback on its functionality. This goes to Ranya's study, too, that validated the 95% efficiency. We also surveyed the existing heating equipment in several of the classrooms to see what kind of existing equipment is present. And etc. And then they get back to the several options. Natural ventilation, mechanically assisted, non-conditioned ventilation at ceiling fans. Neither one of those addresses the air mitigation issue. Mechanically filtered non-conditioned ventilation, in other words, having a big, like a filter unit that you might put in your living room. Or fully air conditioning, use new air conditioners similar to the existing pilot, or retrofit the existing furnaces to add cooling, or add cooling coils and recirculate the air. So those are the options they started to look at. I'll let you just kind of maybe glance through this. It's just graphical designs of the 4 options. On this page here, that's kind of shaded in areas, they talk about the advantages, mechanical advantages, air quality advantages, electrical advantages, maintenance advantages. This kind of goes to your question about long-term costs, efficiency, life cycle cost, and then the first cost, the investment costs. So what they've done now to go on to the next step is they've purchased a unit that they believe would best fit the bill. They looked for a unit that would have the low decibel range necessary for good classroom acoustics, and they couldn't find where the manufacturers gave that kind of information. So they tried and tried. Finally, they went and they bought a unit, and they've done some testing themselves on what the decibel levels are, and they let me know today that they think that the unit is well within the range of what we would consider a quiet unit in a classroom environment. So this is a unit that would conceivably, maybe with some retrofitting, in particular for the classrooms have the blue box heating units, would actually fit in there, would replace, as I understand it, the existing heater, which is too noisy, and would provide HVAC and with the Nanomax filtration system. And hopefully pretty soon they'll be ready to come out and install it in maybe the classroom adjacent to where the current test pilot system is. And then, like I said, we would assume that if everything's coming through the Nanomax, all of the air, we'd get the 95% rating, but you know, depending on Ranya's schedule, perhaps we'd want to do a validation of that as well.
So if I'm understanding this correctly,
Here.
sorry, if I'm understanding what they've written correctly, they recommended option 3B, which would not include air conditioning.
At the moment, yes.
As a teacher, I have to tell you, we need air conditioning. We need it yesterday. The kids are really suffering, and it's very scary, especially with the small children. With the surface area of their bodies, they're dehydrating, and it just makes almost no sense for me, if we're going to do this expensive retrofit, to have haves and have-nots. Because right now we have some classrooms, the bungalows, that have AC, and we have other classrooms that do not. And it doesn't look like the weather is going to be getting any cooler. And clearly, it's more important that they're breathing clean air than they're breathing cool air. But it's just as you cannot function in the classroom with a ton of noise, the kids are overheating. It was simply unbearable and over 100 degrees in some classrooms. I know you know that, but I just want to reiterate that. I'm here because that temperature is somewhat acceptable for adults, but it's just completely unacceptable for small children.
And that is an input that we heard from a lot of our staff this last summer. There were a lot of days that were very warm, and so there was a lot of feedback from staff about the need that you're talking about. In terms of the Southland study, they were asked to develop a system that would provide a good, clean air source for the classrooms. So that's what they're focusing on in from their perspective. This is what it would take. the question of AC or not AC would probably be addressed as a separate issue from the actual air filtration. Although it's related, there's a lot of ways where you could actually see a nexus or a link between the application in the classroom and the HVAC versus AC versus non-AC, especially on the warmer days. And I think that was pretty much brings us up to date. We're waiting to hear about the further tests on the test unit. Once it's ready to go, we'll bring it out, we'll put it in, and then we'll see if that's a good way to go.
Thank you so much. And I just want to sort of make sure that you're being heard, because you're not the only teacher or parent who has actually mentioned this. I just want to make sure that everyone is clear, because we're going to come in and we're going to do some testing. Any unit, including the awesome version we have in that first kindergarten that we have put it in, does not work if the doors are open. So that's by default. And we have actually tested, we have measured minute by minute the levels of pollutants in that room. And when the teachers left the doors open for about 15 minutes or more, it took about a half hour to 45 minutes for the air to get cleaned up in the room again. And so I think everyone needs to be aware of this, because we're going to do testing, and it's going to be under certain conditions, which may not be the same conditions on another day when it's maybe too hot. And I don't know when we're going to do the testing, but I just want to put that out there before we even do the testing, because that's going to be a consideration for people to think about, for the district to consider, the teachers to think about when they see the results, and the parents as well.
Thanks, Rania. Yeah, as Rania's saying, that is something that's going to be seriously considered as a potential investment from the bond proceeds, and it's a need that's recognized. And and it is something that's at the forefront of our attention. It will be given due consideration. So my message is, I can't sit here and promise something would be done in that regard, but it will be one of the decisions that the district takes a look at, a potential investment, as we look at all the different needs throughout the district.
Students who arrive at 7 and leave at 6, and a lot of the practices that teachers have in place here to clean or mitigate the air, such as doing wipe downs with microfiber cloths and not using certain chemicals and keeping doors closed, are not practiced by the aftercare teachers. So there's been a disconnect, and there's not really a time for and it's simply not appropriate for the classroom teacher to then say, you need to do this, because when the bell rings, then it becomes the aftercare teacher's room. So that's a big concern, because a lot of students are here sometimes upwards of 3 hours on campus during that time.
I have a very basic question. What does HVAC mean? It's on everything, and I've been digging, and I can't find out what it means.
It means heating, ventilation, and air conditioning.
Okay.
It's the ventilation that's always the funny part.
Right. Okay. Okay, so when you were talking about HVAC, and you were talking about installing a new HVAC unit in that final bungalow, in the 4-bungalow L-shaped area, right? You were talking about putting heating, ventilation, and air conditioning unit in that bungalow.
If we were to replace the existing... Yeah, if we were to replace the existing units with the unit that's being tested, I would assume it would have the same functionality as the units that are presently in there.
I just want to add that one of the things that the bungalows are different about is, because it's a bungalow, by code it has to have an AC unit attached to it, which is why they have an AC unit to start with, because they're a bungalow temporary facility. I'm not sure why the code is that way. I'm sorry? Oh, so they have fewer windows and less ventilation. Oh, they have no windows. Exactly. So therefore, they have an AC unit, which makes it easier for us to stick a filter in the AC because then you can shut the doors easy. That is not something we have in all the other classrooms. So it's a different situation for all the other classrooms. I would like to add to this conversation that, we've talked about classrooms quite a bit, but we've never talked about the common areas. And I don't know if that's something that the district is considering, but, there's the auditorium that, is something to think about. And then there's the offices of the staff and the lunchroom for the teachers. There's also the library, which houses all of our books. And the computer room needs maybe a filter, but already it has an AC because it has an AC already. So, when you were mentioning, so I want to make sure that we think of that, and that is a consideration which has not been brought up really. These are larger rooms and different setups, so I'm hoping that we do get to those at some point. I also kind of picked up on your mentioning that, we might address maybe some of the classrooms, but not all. I just want to put it there in terms of general knowledge that all of our school falls within 500 feet from the freeway, which is, with all the research that has been done and also some of the data we've measured, that falls under the levels that are different than background levels of the ultrafine particles and whatever. So although some of our school is closer to the freeway, I don't think it's fair to discount the rest of the school. So I just want to put it out there because we are within that 500 feet, which is considered to be where exposure happens from the freeway. So something to put out there as we go forward with this movement. And, I know some of you know this very well, but some of you are new. So I just wanted to make sure that you know that because you will be parents here for many, many more years. And I think you should be aware of that.
Can you clarify what you mean that some classrooms aren't going to get air filtration?
I don't think that was said. So I'm just saying that I
thought you were saying.
I heard that, maybe there might be consideration of more priorities or more classrooms being addressed earlier than others. And perhaps that is a process that has to take place for things to roll out because they got to roll out somehow. But I am just sort of letting everybody know that this whole school is within 500 feet from the freeway, which we are aware is where pollutants come to and are different than background levels in the rest of the neighborhood. So this is general information for all people to know as we are sharing information here.
All right. So what I think I'm hearing you say, Mike, is that we're here today because it's Clean Air El Marino. And the goal of this is to talk about cleaning the air. And of course, we're all concerned about air conditioning, cooling the classrooms as well. And I personally have a child at the high school, and I know that some of those classrooms as well got into the high 90s as far as the heat is concerned. So I know this air conditioning is a concern district-wide. But we're here today to talk about air filtration, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we could also have air conditioning. But right now we're talking about air filtration, cleaning the air.
Yeah, the issue at hand is clean air. And I think when we get into how well the system works that we install once we have the final system installed by Southland, then I think the next step would be to see what we can do to use that system or maybe some variation of that system to make sure that clean air is coming into all the classrooms and the common areas as well, as you state. And the AC, it's a hot topic, no pun intended, and it will be addressed. There's a certain amount of money that the bond provides. There are many different needs, but that will be addressed in its relationship to all the other needs as well. And that's a process that's moving forward. The money is now in the bank from the first bond proceeds, $26 million. And so the citizens or the Community Budget Advisory Committee is meeting, and I know that they'd be very interested in the perspectives that you might want to share about what areas, not just HVAC or AC, that you think that the needs would be to figure out where to best spend that money.
I wanted to just take one step back and share that the Clean Air Group team was invited to be part of the conversation with Southland and the options they were presenting and why they were thinking what they were thinking, and also helping them move to the next step and what is the choice that they're thinking of investigating now. We were part of the conversation, and I want to thank Mike for keeping us in the loop and including us all the way through. And that whole conversation about the Nanomax filters and the efficiency, we were able to help them with, and they took that to heart and worked with it. So we appreciate that very much, that it actually was useful and used. What I also want to say is what we learned is that they really are trying to use systems that are already in place to build on that infrastructure, because then that will be less expensive but also quicker to happen. And there's value to that, and they do want to try that route and see if that might work. And so I kind of wanted to say that because it wasn't clear to us at first, why wouldn't we just install that pilot unit in all the classrooms? Well, it's quite large. It doesn't go physically, you can't locate it around each of our classrooms because some areas are used by the kids for walking and stuff, and you can't pluck that into, 45 classrooms or whatever. And also to put that unit on the roof, which would be ideal, would take retrofitting and structural permits, and which would take a long time to get that approved by the district state architects. I think it's the DSA office. So that would take a long time. So they were trying to do what is faster using already existing infrastructure to build on that so that it happens faster. So we are hoping that that is actually a great idea. But also they're hoping that they're using a system that, should it turn out that AC is important, that they could attach it to the existing unit, and simply by adding a coil it can be done. So the idea is to build from existing infrastructure, add on to it, with the ability to add further the AC piece if the need be. So sort of a step-by-step process. Be great if we didn't have to go step by step, but I guess realistically it doesn't exactly work that way. So we had to learn that, and now we understand why they're doing what they're doing. But
another thing that Southland's going to help us with is to develop an understanding of how expensive or non-expensive it would be to provide AC to the schools and the classrooms. I think if it's relatively inexpensive, then that would have a major impact on the decision. If it's super expensive, that would likewise have a major impact on the decision. Once again, it's a question of priorities of where that comes in. When you look at the restrooms, we have a lot of restroom issues. There are many other issues. So Southland is going to help us determine what the approximate cost would be. Now, as Rania said, if we can retrofit our existing system, that is not a super expensive proposition, we don't think. And much faster. If we have to reinforce and go up and bring in structural engineers and reinforce the roofs, if that were the option, then that's going to be much more expensive and take much longer. So, but that is something we're working on. We're trying to develop a sense of what the actual cost would be to provide AC.
Is there any kind of timeline for a bigger project, or what stage is it once they install that? Is there what's the projection of what's to come, along with these committee meetings and the oversight?
Yeah.
How can people get involved in that?
Yeah, the question is there a timeline for this? And we held a series of meetings with Southland. We had 2 or 3, and what they've asked us now is to wait for the next one until they are ready to install this test unit to see if we can integrate it into our existing infrastructure. And then if that works, they get the Nanomax filter in there, and that would be the next step. And then once that is there, then, like, for example, if the decision were to be made on air conditioning, well, that would obviously be much less expensive, and therefore maybe be afforded a higher priority in terms of the bond investments. So I think that's the next step. Right now, and I've been in contact with them. They assure me that they did the initial sound study, and it looked good. It came back that it's not going to create too much noise in the classroom. It's going to be under the threshold. And so once that's ready, then we'll be ready to move forward. If it looks like that's a really good solution for air quality, then we'll know that that would be a better way to go in terms of long-range timeline, as well as expense, than putting big units on the roof.
What exactly do the classrooms that are not portables have in them right now? Does it have a fan ventilation? Like, what is there?
Yeah, at the moment they have a heating unit, and that can that heats up the classroom in the morning. But that's it, essentially. I'm not sure if the heater units are if we can run them. Does anybody know that works here? Have you ever tried to run the heating unit as just a fan?
Oh, as a fan? No. At least the classrooms in the rows of classrooms that are one row away from the freeway, and there are 3 of those rows that are very similar. All of those classrooms just have heaters that are incredibly loud, and they do heat the room, but there's no fan option.
I think that's the same with the others that we've, right?
Yeah, I think so. Well, and the other thing I was going to say, that from what I understand, it's a completely closed environment. So if they shut the doors and turn on the heat, they're not getting the carbon dioxide levels go up. So they're not getting oxygen coming into the classroom.
So you have to have the door open.
Well, can I address that?
I think so.
Actually, the current windows we have let in a lot of outside air. Yeah. The windows do. The windows, they don't shut very tightly. And if we were to move forward with whatever solution that we employ, we're going to have new window systems so that the outside air is not getting in without passing through the NanoMax system. That's a good observation. But actually, what they tell us is there's a plethora of fresh air coming in, which is good to address the concern that you expressed, but it's not so good when we're trying to filter all the air coming in.
And yeah, because it's older buildings, so they have leaky seals, which helps provide the fresh air. I believe that some of our classrooms do have fresh air coming in, even if all the windows are closed, but not all. So my recollection from when a walkthrough was done was some do, some don't. But that issue was addressed by Southland pretty quickly when we were at the meeting, and they said that's the first thing that we have to do is make sure that we have return air, a room, what is it called? Outside air coming into the unit and going so that fresh air is constantly brought in. So that they knew was an issue that they had to make sure they addressed, and we were very happy that they took note of that. So that is something that's kind of part of the whole story that has to be dealt with. What I do want to say is that one of the things that we've done in the pilot room to overcome the issue of leaky old buildings is to provide some positive pressure inside of the room. So if you provide enough air volume, even if you have leaky windows, air is kind of being pushed out and preventing that from coming in, which is sort of a way around an old building. And that's why we did that. And it worked, clearly. It helped a great deal. So we're hoping a similar situation will be done with this system, too, that they're suggesting.
Excellent questions. I think that's, yes?
And so as far as, is there a timeline as to when you guys are going to try to finalize some of these decisions so that it can actually get started?
Yeah, once we have the unit that Southland thinks might serve our purposes well in place, and they're testing it at the moment, I wouldn't think it would take more than a few weeks for them to finalize their testing. Like I said, they should be able to obtain airflow information from the manufacturer. It was the acoustic, it was the decibel levels that the manufacturers had no data on, which is why they had to purchase one, and then they tested it themselves. So I will update. I talk to them constantly. We want to get back out and schedule another meeting of the group that's looking into this and be ready to move forward. It depends on them, but I wouldn't think it'd be, I think it's more a matter of weeks than anything else, but that's my own opinion. And we were hoping we'd have one of the representatives here tonight, but they had the manager in charge of the project had a prior commitment. But I can see what I can find out in terms of their.
So just a couple of weeks for the decision to kind of be made, and then the timeline would be what, like after the break, to get actually started on the implementation?
Well, the decision wouldn't be made, no decision would be made until the unit's actually installed and then tested. So it would extend longer than a couple of weeks, but I would think the unit would be installed within a few weeks is what I'm saying. And then we do the testing and we kick the tires and see if it's really a viable solution.
Okay, well, thank you for the update and for fielding all the questions. I think that helps us all get on the page that we needed to be on. So I thank you very much and all that you're doing and the district is doing.
One more thing, Mike, you mentioned about the oversight committee? Or is it, they're the ones that are going to be presented certain projects that you want to move forward with as a district, and then could you just repeat it?
Can you?
Yeah, there's actually two committees. There is an existing committee. It's been in place.
Explain to the audience and to us, what's the process of actually?
Yeah, what sounds good. What we're doing is we have a committee called the Community Budget Advisory Committee that's been in place for a long time, a lot of years. And in the past, they dealt with situations where the general fund was being cut by the state. And so they kind of assisted in saying, well, what if you cut this or that? And then it was an independent committee where they came up, they kind of survey staff, residents. The committee is actually made up of a combination of community members and district people. And then they'd say, well, maybe you could reduce this or reduce that or whatever. Since our general fund and the state has made a big turn, the economy's made a big turn, we're looking at having them employ those same skills into looking at how we might want to prioritize the use of investment of the bond proceeds. And so they are in the process of beginning that. We provided the committee with information on the needs assessment that was done. There are, according to the needs assessment, there are about $165 million in needs they've identified down to a pretty good detail level. The bond over the next 12 years will provide $106 million, about $26 million every 3 years. So the idea is, what are the top priorities? And that's one of the things that they'll be looking at. If there's something that you would want to bring to their attention, I would invite you to come to one of the meetings. I believe the next meeting is in December 10th, is on December 10th at the boardroom. And anybody can attend. It's a formal public meeting. We start with the Pledge of Allegiance. We're subject to the Brown Act. And one of the first things on the agenda is to ask if there's any public comment. And I would encourage you to come and make your feelings known about what you think the committee should be taking into consideration. And then at some point, they'll make some recommendations to the board as things go along. And the Oversight Committee is actually more of a technical committee that looks at what we expend the funds on to make sure that it is exactly what was approved by the community in the ballot language. That's more of a technical thing where they say, well, yeah, it's very specific what we can spend bond money on, and that's what they call the Citizens Budget Oversight Committee. So it's kind of two ends of the spectrum. One is before the investment, and one is usually more after the investment to make sure it was done appropriately.
And as you're talking about the process, can you talk about the how people got into becoming on the committee? Because I know that there was an open application process that some people may have been familiar with and some people may have not been familiar with, but there was an application process, right?
Yeah.
Am I saying it correctly?
You are for the bond oversight committee? Yeah, there was. Yeah, we had 11 applicants apply, and the committee is now formed of 11 people. So I'll let you do the math.
Oh, wow! So they all were in.
And it was very fortunate that all 11 people were highly qualified, and that they represent. There's specific segments that you have to have a committee represent, and so we were lucky that we had some really devoted, because it's going to take a lot of their time and effort, and we ended up with a really good committee. People that I know are going to do a great job.
So I'd like to move to the next couple of items that we have, and just sort of update everybody on all the other things we're doing as part of this work. And one is an anti-idling campaign that Christina will talk about and that she's taken leadership in, and also the wipe down of the classrooms campaign that we've been doing for a few years now. And again, Christina. And after that, we have Maestro Paul that will share with us another item, which is related to, or maybe both of you can talk about it with the wipe down and the teachers, if they're being able to get involved, or is it still a parent run activity? So if you both can just mention that, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So the No Idling campaign. Hopefully everybody's heard of it. I know. There's been other parents. I had a friend and parent say to me the other day, you should tell people to turn their cars off around the school. And I was like, haven't you seen the signs and the flyers but it still gets missed. So there's actually a big sign by the entrance with my daughter, as it would happen to be, breathing in clean air, saying, turn off your car. So we're encouraging parents to turn their cars off while they're waiting around the school, because just that air pollution can actually really spike to unhealthy levels from just those cars. So we don't need to add to the freeway. And actually we talked with the city, and our principal paid for the signs, and the city paid to have them installed along Coolidge and then along Port. There's little signs that are up now next to the parking signs saying, it's clean air, turn off your cars. Be idle free. And mostly parents have been really good about turning their cars off. And once in a while I remind them, and they're very pleasant when they agree to turn their car off. So there's been a big difference in the idling. It used to be everybody just sat outside on an afternoon just building up everything, waiting for the children to come out and walk into the cloud of fumes. So as I envisioned it. And then, so that's like off to a really solid, I think, kind of in a status quo. People are doing a good job, like I said. And then we're doing wipe downs. Last year we upped it from once a month to once a week. And you're in Miyawaki Sensei's classroom, right? Yeah, so that we have a parent that's from the most stellar classroom about wipe downs. They did 15 wipe downs in October. 15 days the parents came in and they wiped down corners and desks and chairs, and they cleaned that place. If you have to have emergency surgery,
Bring them on board.
that's the room to go to. That's what I was thinking. An earthquake, go to room 12. I went around the cafetorium here and did the windowsills because I saw it when I was here at bingo night, and I was like, this has got to be dusted. So this is kind of what you can get. Damp, wrung out really well is the best way to really grab onto the most dust. We have some classrooms that are less willing to participate, some classrooms that are still spraying chemicals into the air and handing Clorox wipes to the students. And so we're trying to get the information out there that it says, do not use around, or, you know, keep out of reach of children. So handing it to them is not out of reach. And then, they're supposed to also, after touching any chemicals, wash your hands. And I would recommend after wiping down that parents wash their hands too to get the freeway chemicals off of there. So the clouds can be dropped off in the principal's, or not by the principal's office, in the teacher's lounge to be washed, or we're really encouraging the parents to wash their own to get them back quicker. So we've got really great involvement overall across the campus. In October, we had 72 wipe downs. So, yeah. Parents are doing a really, last year we were lucky if we got one a month. Yeah, from a classroom. So it's really, parents have really stepped up and gotten very involved, and they're doing great. So.
And tell them about the prize.
Oh, yes. So actually this morning, so we do a drawing every time a classroom does a wipe down. We give them another entry into the drawing, and once a month we do it, and the classroom that wins gets free coffee delivered, Starbucks coffee or something like it, to their classroom in the morning as a as a thank you, and as a
As they drop off the kids.
for the parents, because the parents are doing the work. Yeah, we were rewarding the kids with popsicles, which can be like punishing the parents in a way, right? So instead of handing them sugar, we're caffeinating the parents to encourage it, and we give some to the teachers too.
Did you notice this morning there was kind of the unity of the two classes?
Yes.
As I explained, we are working so tightly with each other to get our classrooms clean that it didn't really matter who won.
Right.
It wasn't a matter of that. We're just in it to make sure that
I know.
Okay, now you have to repeat all of that again.
Oh. This morning, we came across the coffee that was on the one table that we share between the two first grade Japanese classes. And Mizuta's class was awarded that. And what I had explained to Christina is we had joined last year between Nimura and Nagumo Sensei's class, not so much as a competition of who could get as many wipe downs, but how many of us could participate and make sure that the safety for our children's breathing was in mind. And so putting forth that and framing it in that light as opposed to a competitive light, both classrooms, parents who participate in our clean air committees, participate as a cooperative rather than competitively. So this morning when the coffee was there, it was being awarded to Mizuta, but Miyawaki Sensei's class, because we pick up the slack for each other and share that responsibility, it was both teachers got the coffee, both sets of parents who participate, and anybody else gets to participate in that award or prize. And I had shared that with Christina, and she had asked me in an email if she could share that with the rest of the parents, and I said, by all means, yes, because it only is a benefit to our children. And as Christina showed you those rags, I do Monday morning wipe down with another parent, and we do a wipe down on Friday morning. And I sometimes do it, or I share it with another parent. And you come in there on Monday morning, and it's as if nobody wiped down for a week. It's filthy. And as you said, it's the leaky windows. It's completely the leaky windows, because I don't imagine they're leaving those windows open through the weekend.
In fact, if you look at the windows over there, you can see that's fairly representative of the roof, what's in the classrooms, and they're not seeing it at all.
And also on the weekend, once there's not as much activity, all that dust is
Settling. So what we're trying to do is we get the window sills, and we try to do in back of things and the emergency boxes and the top of the file boxes, and that's what we're doing in Miyawaki Sensei's class. And what we're realizing when we pull out the desks, since they're all squashed up, when we take the rag and go down there, it's just black, and it isn't just eraser dust. So we're trying to participate, but I like the cooperative approach. Anybody else?
Yeah. A lot of classes also have kids that use the microfiber cloths. They do their own desks. But also, just as parents, you all have a lot of power. If the teachers are pressured by the parents because the parents say, we want this done, and regardless of if it's something that has to do with academics or something that has to do with the safety and the health of the children, we will listen to the parents, or the principal will start pressuring us because she or the vice principal is hearing that this is what the parents want. So the parents really need to take that into their own hands. You know, you can demand that the teacher stops using Clorox wipes. You have a lot of power. You can say, you know, please just let us take over, and we will do wipe downs when it is convenient for you. And please do not use Lysol in the classroom, because all of that, all of those things, either spraying with Lysol or wiping with Clorox wipes, they're attractors for dust. Then dust is attracted to those surfaces that have been cleaned with those chemicals. And if your child is in a classroom that has aftercare, you can tell the aftercare teachers the same thing. You know, we're very concerned about this. Please do not use those products around our children. And the teachers do what the parents ask for.
I just wanted to add that I know that a lot of teachers ask that their students do wipe downs, and some teachers are very proactive about it, and we're very happy to see that. And one thing that we've asked Senora Paul to help us with, and there are a couple of teachers who are more engaged, to see if they could help spread the message to other teachers as to how they make their students really do it. But the help of parents is great, because you can help us wash the cloths and make them available for the students. Otherwise, it's really hard for the teacher. So we need parent involvement again and again.
I just once again wanted to ask a very basic, silly question. Why is it important to wipe down a classroom?
This for you. Yeah, we have many answers here.
No, you started the wipe downs. That's true. The wipe downs were recommended, because I asked her why, I mean, besides the obvious grossness, but it's recommended by the EPA, right? For indoor air quality, to improve the indoor air quality, because the dust gets kicked up in the air again. And what we're concerned about is not so much the grime, which does matter, because if they touch it, then they touch their noses because they're kids. You know, they get, yeah, or they eat it, or they whatever, lick their desks. That goes into their system. So they're whatever lands on their black carbon, combustion, whatever goes into their bodies. But we're mostly concerned about the air, so that it gets kicked up in the air. And that's also why we're concerned about spraying Lysol and using even wipes. They pollute the air quality. They reduce the air quality. There's actually asthmagens in them. So that's not our goal. Our goal is to make it a better place to breathe. And that's, I mean, for now, it is a minute difference compared to the air filters, but it's a difference, and it's what we can do for now. And so, so yes, that's why we do the wipe downs.
And the microfiber cloths specifically are also really effective antibacterially. So especially going into the cold season, it's another reason to wipe down the classrooms.
And also from a health perspective of the children, and I'm an advocate for that, and as is everybody here, you know, the ultrafine particles are probably not what we're wiping. It's the larger particles, because they're the ones that settle on surfaces. But for a child with allergies, that kicks asthma up, that can exacerbate it, that can, you know, bring on an asthmatic reaction. Same with the chemicals. So it contributes to the air quality, and removing it from their environment can help maybe not every single child, but certainly some of the children. And that's enough of a reason for us to do it at all. So it contributes to the indoor air quality dramatically.
And the other thing is about asthmagens. It actually, in completely healthy kids, it can cause asthma. So it is best for everybody, but they have immediate effects for the kids who do have asthma.
Marino, could you mention about the article that we're going to be in?
Oh, I just want to say that we have been recognized by a number of organizations for what we do, and we're being watched as a school that has come together with administrators, with regulators, with the parents and the teachers to do something about this. Well, there's a lot of schools in this state that are near freeways, and not all of them are able to get themselves together to put a solution together that works for their school. And we're very fortunate that we were able to do that. So we have been recognized at meetings by regional EPA. We've attended meetings together to speak about the efforts of the school. But most recently, we were interviewed for the webpage of National EPA. And our story is going on their website. So we will share that with you when it's finalized. They're still drafting it, and when that comes out, it will be for the world to see. And so the district knows we're being watched, and we're going to continue to do a really good job of bringing this to fruition, because we want to be example to other schools that don't have the resources we have, and the parents and the administrators and the consciousness that we seem to have here. All right.
Well, yeah, once again, this group has been so active in bringing this to the attention of not only the community but the district. Rania and Stefan have been tireless. I know a lot of you put a lot of time into it. The district is taking it very seriously, and we aim to do something about it.
Thank you, and thank you to Stefan, our amazing cameraman, who is incredible at diffusing information, putting it out there, contacting all of you guys, sending emails, and Christina, who is walked away, but she's been amazing too at communicating with all of you. And so more involvement is best, and if you can get involved, we are so happy to welcome you. Thank you.